Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my user interface. This video is going to be really simple, which is going to be a nice quick wow live, well, hopefully quick, just about my user interface. Now, I know a lot of you have been asking for this, and I know I've kind of been delayed a little bit on it, but I will explain why. First of all, I've had a few real-life problems. The husband's been ill, poor sod, but, you know, that's delayed me just a tiny bit. But most importantly, I think, I've been working to try and upload this user interface, and I've faced several problems in terms of getting the customizations to work and making sure it all works when you download it and things like that. But as I was going through it, I thought to myself, me giving you this user interface just directly is very hypocritical of me. Because on my channel, I am always trying to put forth the view that, you know, you should know this game as well as you can. You should master it. You should try and do the best that you possibly can, and especially with the user interface, you shouldn't use things like, for instance, LVUI, just to completely overhaul your user interface into something completely different. And although I am very comfortable with this UI, and I think it's very clean, I don't know if it's a great idea for me to just release this interface and say, here you go, have it. Not only is that hypocritical, but I don't know if it's actually going to be that helpful to a lot of people. Because suddenly you've just got this new interface with all these different quirks and things, and it's just annoying more than anything else. And it's very easy to just download something like this, get completely overwhelmed, and then just run away. Which is what I've done with a lot of different UIs in the past, especially these custom ones. So what I think I'll do instead is take you through the user interface, explain what add-ons I use, how I have them customized, and then you can basically just look at them and say, okay, this is the add-ons that he uses, this is how he has them set up. I can do something similar for my class, my spec, and the way that I play. Because as a shaman, as you notice, I have a lot of spells. On my mage, for instance, I will not have nearly this many spells, which means that I might need a different layout with the bars, which means that a whole bunch of other things then need to be moved so that it all makes sense and fits together. So, I'm just going to take you through the different add-ons that I use. So I'm just going to quickly check my notepad here. We will start with Bartender. That's /bartender. Now, this add-on just makes all of the bars in the game customizable. So, by default, you have this weird art bar down here, which I can actually activate with this. You see, you normally have this art bar down here, and then that's where your where your bars would be. Instead, this lets you move and customize the bars as you wish. So if I just unlock all of the bars and close this, you will see everything that is highlighted in green, except for this, because this is a different add-on. Everything that is highlighted in green is a bar that I have edited myself. So, for instance, you'll see I've got bar 7, 6, 10, 8, and 1 here. As you can see, they're a bit disorganized in that regard, but, you know, it's just the way I do it. So, you see I can move this as much as I want. I can put it anywhere on the screen that I want. I normally have it down here. And as you can see, before I just go back and edit this a bit more, we've got things like the vehicle bar, which is for leaving vehicles, the extra action bar, the pet bar, the XP and reputation bars. This pet bar might seem a bit out of place, but you'll realize when I show you my unit frames, you'll see why this makes sense. And then on the right here, I've got kind of my the bars that I don't really use too much. So things like my Bloodlust, my Ancestral Recall, my Garrison ability, Farsight, Lightning Shield, and my mounts. So those are just things that I don't use that often. So we'll just go back into this. And for instance, let's look at bar 1 here. So this is the Bartender customization options menu. And from here, you can do everything. So the alpha just changes how visible it is. The scale obviously changes the scale. I set it to 1 for everything except bar 7 here, which I make bigger because these are my 4 most important buttons. And although it seems like it kind of hangs out here, if I target something, you'll see it goes nicely in between the two. We also have padding, how much room there is in between the different buttons. And then how many buttons you can... The default is 12, but you can go down to as many as you want. I use 6 for most of them. As you can see, bar 7 is 4. This one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then the rest of them are 12, just layered in a different way. So for instance, I go to bar 8. You will see that it's a little bit bigger than normal. It's got 12 buttons, and the rows are set to 2. You could set it to have 9 rows, so it's all one great big column. You could set it to have 1 row, so it looks like the default bar. But 2 makes it look like this. That's how I like it. And then you can have a few different things. You can hide the macro text. So for instance, if I go to bar 10 here, which has this Purify Spirit macro here, I can just hide the macro text and it goes away. But I like having the macros there, so I know which one's a macro and which one isn't. You can hide the hotkeys. which I don't like to do. And you can also do click-through. Now, this is something that's very helpful. Now, I have this bar one down here because I have recently swapped to enhancement, which is a spoiler as to what guide I'm doing next, but, you know, there you go. And I normally have this bar hidden underneath bar 7, so to do that, I would just make it really small. I drag it over bar 7, make it really small. Change the alpha to 0, and then press click-through. Now, what click-through means is that you can't click through it. So, for instance, if I do bar 7 and I just lock it, you see I can click on Unleash Elements, and I will cast it. And I can do these things, and it won't work, obviously, because I don't have a target. But, as I just wait for this to cool down, if I then press click through, and I start clicking, you'll see, not only can I not click on it, but I actually click through it on the terrain, which means I detarget myself. See that? So that's very helpful for when you want a bar that you still want active. So I'll just set this one back up to 1, and then drag it. It's good for a bar that you don't want active, but that you might want to use the hotkeys for. So, for instance, things like Chain Lightning, Lightning Bolt, Fire Nova, and my shocks and my wind shear. I don't really need them right now, but I like having them down there just for the moment so I can see them. Another thing I use here is the positioning. Now, this is very helpful for just moving it a little bit, making sure it all works. You can center it horizontally here. Lovely. Center it vertically. Don't want to do that, but still really nice. And if you use this bar snapping feature here, it'll actually snap it to the different sections of the screen so that you can make it a little bit, as you see here, I can just slide it along. It just works much easier. I like to have it off so that I can pinpoint edit things. So that is Bartender. I would say nice and simple. It is a fairly simple add-on, and that's just the way I do it. So next up, BigWigs. We are going in alphabetical order here. Alphabetical order. So BigWigs is my raid boss mod add-on. It's just like Deadly Boss mods. I'll just toggle the anchors here and you can see the various things. Except it's just cleaner in my opinion. It has better noises. That's not centered. There we go. It's just cleaner. It works a little bit better, and I just like the noises it makes more so than anything else. It's just really nice. That's just the way I have it set up here. So if I go back to /BigWigs, and I will create a test bar here. And I'll just close the anchor. So you can see, I mean, if you've watched me raid, then you'll see at any point I'll have these kind of things going on showing me the timers of possibilities. This is going to be really loud because this will, I believe, now play the sound that happens when I beat a boss. Oh, it won't. Wow. That actually happened last time. Scared the living daylights out of me while I was recording. Made me stop because I actually screamed because it was really loud in my ears. But that's fine. As you can see, that works really nicely. And there are a whole bunch of different ways that you can edit this and sort it all out. I like to leave pretty much everything here as it is. I like to maybe change a little bit of the sounds, but I like having the victory long. But other than that, it's all fine. Everything works perfectly. And you can go to bosses here and set exactly how your individual... So for instance, if I go to Heimwall, you can set how individual abilities are handled. So for instance, if I wanted to see a tank and healer alert for Impale on Kargath, I could set it to be emphasized, so it would super emphasize the message, put it on the middle of the screen, and let me know when it's coming in. So that's BigWigs. Lovely little add-on that will help you significantly. Next up is ErrorFilter. This is really simple. Basically, this throttles messages for you. So, you know, for instance, if I disable the throttling of messages, and I find this Tundra hair here, and I back out of range. As you can see, it says out of range. I spam it. No, it doesn't actually show it like that. It's actually still throttling it. But there you go. You see, it comes up and it says, you know, out of range, out of range, out of range. And you can spam the center of your screen up here, which can be really, really annoying, in my opinion. And this basically stops that. It filters a lot of the, you know, out of range. If you're casting a lot, so for instance, if I just run this way, just activate my Spirit Walk to go over to the training dummies, and I'm constantly casting like Lightning Bolt or something. Say I'm Elemental and I'm constantly casting Lightning Bolt. As I do that, I'm constantly casting Lightning Bolt over and over and over again. And normally you get a message up here on the center of your screen saying, you know, like, this spell isn't ready yet because you'd be casting it as the global cooldown came up. But it just doesn't do that this time. It just doesn't show that. It just keeps the center of your screen nice and clear so that you can focus entirely upon the game and what's going on in it, as opposed to the constant messages saying, oh, you know, you're out of range, you can't do all that stuff. And you can edit it as much as you want. If I just type ErrorFilter again. I typed that wrong. There we go. If I just go in here, you can filter it to change anything you want. It's really great. You can select exactly what you want to filter and what you want to show. It's just brilliant in that regard. So I would definitely suggest ErrorFilter. Alright, what is next? FontDamageChanger. This is one that I actually use in the interface. This hasn't got an actual add-on that goes with it. It's just like a file and a folder that you put into your interface folders. I'll include a link in the description to all of the add-ons that I use here, and it just shows you exactly... I'll just show you, actually. There you go. It's a different font for my damage. It's really that simple. I just want a different font for my damage. That's it. So that's FontDamageChanger. Really simple. Next one is not very simple at all. It's called KgPanels. Just going to activate that. And KgPanels is artwork. So you see these borders around my bars, except for these ones in the middle. You see they have this fancy border around them. That is KgPanels. Now, these are actually panels that if I, for instance, go to bars, right, and I unlock it, you'll see I can actually drag this if I wanted to. I'm not going to because it's really hard to get right. But it basically creates this border for you. So I could... if I change the opacity, is that going to work? Oh, bollocks. It's really difficult to sort out. But it's very complex, and I'm not going to do a guide on it because it's just so complicated. And in my opinion, it's not really worth it just having this fancy little border around your buttons. I don't really see the use of it, but I put a lot of work into it just because I wanted a UI that looked fancy. And I used to have all these like chains and stuff, but they just didn't look very clean. But that is the add-on that I use for things like that. It's called KgPanels. I would not suggest using it. An add-on I do suggest using is Masque. This is a really simple add-on that just changes the skin of your buttons and things. So for instance, if I just go to bartender here and I go to skin, you can change the skin of your bars to anything you want. So if I wanted the light hex, I could do that, and you can see now it changes this. And this actually looks kind of nice. Obviously it doesn't work with my KgPanels, but it still looks very nice. So we've got Dream here, which looks nice. Darien Clean, and then you can change things like the color. You can change the gloss. You can have a backdrop to them, which is a little bit difficult to see, but it is there. And then you can change the colors and all that kind of things. And then you can actually change how it looks for the specific one. So if I wanted my number 1, which is down here, to have a different one, I could have light hex for that one, and everything else could be different. But as it stands, I just use the zoomed functionality for all of my action bars, because you see it works really nicely with KgPanels. That being said, I believe it's bar 7 that is in the center here. It is. So I could just have like the default Blizzard ones, or maybe the Trinity Diamond, or the Hex 3D, all these fancy things. So I think we'll just go with the Blizzard default ones, just to create a little bit of a border around these. So there we go. I've actually edited my UI in the middle of this, so that's good. So that is Masque, and I also use the Darien, Renata, and Trinity plugins for that. I think it comes default, but those are the ones that I use. Next up is MoveAnything. This doesn't have a slash command. You go into your game menu, default escape, and find MoveAnything right here. You click it, and this lets you move anything. Absolutely anything you can move it. So, for instance, the world map up here, and is that my minimap? No, here we go, minimap. This is what we want. So if I wanted to change the minimap, and I wanted to move it, I can move the minimap. Want it in the center of my screen? Right here? I can do that. There we go. There's my minimap in the center of the screen. I don't want it there. Reset it. Right back up there. This is a great add-on. You can just move anything you want. And it's just great for, not so much for creating a custom interface, but more for adorning it. So, for instance, the quest tracker over here would normally be right up against the side of the screen and would be clipping with this bar right here. But I've used MoveAnything to just shunt it to the side a little bit, so that it's all nice and clean. This is great for when you have a custom UI like this and you have a few things that are getting in the way. So, for instance, if I had a mission that completed, by default it appears like right here, right in the middle of my action bars, which really sucks. But using MoveAnything, I can move it to be like over here, so that it just pops up over here instead of in the middle of my UI. So MoveAnything, a fantastic add-on for just moving the little things, you know, that just get in the way. So definitely use MoveAnything. It's a fantastic add-on. Moving on, this one's pretty simple. It's called OmniCC. This creates, more than anything else, it's just a cooldown text. So for instance, if I use my Unleash Elements, you will see I have this 10-second bar here. This 10-second, it's just a number. That's all it does. It just shows me the cooldown of my Unleash Elements. And then if I do that with anything else, like for instance, if I activate Liquid Magma down here, 45 seconds, my Ghost Wolves, my Totem, my Haste cooldown, my Survivability cooldowns, my Healing Tide, Tremor Totem, Earth Grab, Grounding Totem, Capacitor Totem, Ascendance and Spirit Walk, Ancestral Guidance, Totemic Projection, Ancestral Swiftness, Purify Spirit, although that's not going on cooldown. Healing Rain, everything, you know, it just shows you the cooldowns for all this stuff, and it's really great. It's just really helpful for having it there, because if you see, for instance, this is a classic example, right? Let's say you're on progress, and you're the shaman, and you bloodlust, you're like, rah, bloodlust, you do it at the right time, and 10 minutes later, you're still fighting the boss, or maybe someone dies, and it's 5 minutes later. And if I just delete this, although it doesn't seem to be showing up there, which is interesting. Although, actually, I think that's actually a setting you can have here in OmniCC. Let's see. It is here somewhere. Whoops. But yeah, I know that here it is here somewhere. I'm probably missing it. Here we go. Minimum duration to display neck. No, that's not it. Basically, here somewhere you can change it so that it shows you the cooldown remaining at some points. Like, for instance, it wouldn't show you at 5 minutes, although it is showing it here. Maybe that's just a bug on my part. That's interesting. I'll have to experiment with that. But you get my point. It's really helpful for seeing the exact cooldown of an ability, as opposed to just, like, trying to guess. So is that 8 seconds, 7 seconds? I'm not entirely sure. This just shows you nice and simple, and it just adorns straight on top of your action bars. And it actually works with things like WeakAuras as well, which is really nice. So that is OmniCC. Fantastic little add-on. Next, an add-on that I'm asked about a lot. This is OPie. I did say that correctly this time. Now, this is a very complicated looking add-on, which in its most basic form lets you do this. It just lets you create menus around your cursor. So, for instance, I want to mark you, which I probably can't do. I can. So I can just mark this guy really quickly, anything I want. I can do it on the fly. So, for instance, you're doing Tectus, right? Whole bunch of ads spawn in, but you just kill one of them. You want to mark one of them, it's like, okay, mark that one. Done. All right, who's going to kill next? That one. And then after that, we want that one. Really simple. Really easy, because if, for instance, I just undo that. If I wanted to mark this by default, you'd right-click here, target marker, skull, and you're also moving around, dodging things, doing your rotation as you do all this, and it's really complicated. Or you can just like that, nice and easy. Now, this revolves entirely around key binding. If you are a clicker, this will probably not be too good for you. So all this keybind is Alt R, and it just lets me mark things. Want to mark myself? Done. Pretty simple. So I just go into it. This looks very complicated. You can change the way it behaves here. But really what you want to do here is you want to go to ring bindings, make sure you have all these set up exactly as you want. And custom rings are really where the meat of the add-on comes into its own. So for instance, I have these items here that it has my Dranic Intellect, my Dranic Agility Potion, Flask, and the shard thing. I forget what it's called. Where is it? Yeah, Aurelius's Whispering Crystal. It's just the thing it's just a pseudo flask that lets you increase your stats. So I just activate them with Alt T, and you see I've got them right here. Nice and simple. I don't have any potions on me at the moment, so that other one isn't showing up. But yeah, that's OP. It's just really powerful. A little bit complicated, but I'll just make a new ring to take you through it. So you just go to Custom Rings, New Ring. Let's call it, what should we call it? Let's call it just a random guide ring. Let's call it that. Now, we will bind it to Alt C, let's say. So that will let me create this when I do Alt C. So there you go. Here it is right now. It doesn't have any slices or buttons on it. So we want to go to here, add a new slice, and we will add a few things. So let's add all of the different challenge mode casts. So we want that one. We're just double clicking on all these. So Path of the Scarlet Blade, Necromancer. We'll just type in. And you can actually filter with a search here. So Path. So Jade Serpent, Shadowpan, Setting Sun. We haven't done that one. Shadowpan, haven't done that one. Setting Sun, Scarlet Monastery, Black Ox, and that's just a few of them. And then we go to Alt C, and here they all are. And you just drag like that, and now we're teleporting. So nice and simple. I'm not going to go there because that'll create a loading screen and slow down this video. But yeah. And then if you wanted to delete it, we just go here to Custom Rings, select a ring to modify, Random Guide Ring. And then we can select different slices to show it. You can delete the particular slices you want and then add new ones, or if we can just go back to the custom ring and delete the whole thing. So now Alt-C doesn't do that anymore. It just opens and closes my character pane. So that's OP. Really, really powerful. Lovely little add-on. Next up is an add-on called Postal, and I actually have some mail ready for this. So Postal is a really powerful mail add-on that just lets you filter and change and just makes mail much easier. So let's say you're playing the auction house and you've got all of this stuff, like you've sold like a whole bunch of different stuff. You'd have to like shift left click on all of them or open them and then hit the money button, or you can just hit this open all button. There we go. And I have the Scabbard of Kaianos that I found while I was doing a daily quest. And it did not sell because people don't want my money. I am really broke right now, as you can see. Which is a problem, but I'll sort that out later. So, it's just a really nice little add-on that lets you it just adds extra functionality to your mail in every regard. So, that's just a really nice little add-on. So, that's Postal. Next up is Pratt. This is my chat bar right here. So, this is Pratt. It's very complicated. Well, it's not complicated. It just has a lot of different options. You can change the colors of everything here. You can change the way it displays different things, so you can show the different arrows, which is just, it's clipping there a little bit, so I don't have that. It's got the social menu at the top there, the minimize button, which doesn't seem to be showing up, and then the menu, there it is, the scroll down reminders, things like that. It's just a really powerful add-on that lets you change not only stuff in terms of your, like the font that you use and things like that, but if I just go up here, as you can see, it has this thing called end of scrollback right here. So this is when I logged off, right? This is when I logged off a few minutes ago before I started this video. And then I logged back in. It saves all of the stuff that happened beforehand. So this is me borrowing Elishan for Skype because I was testing my user interface with him. But I had this conversation with him via Whisper before I logged off. But it still shows that. Now the default chat doesn't show that, so that's really nice. So that's a really lovely little thing. So that's Pratt, lovely little add-on. Oh, one more thing it does do is it changes the font of chat bubbles as well. So that's it's just a nice little thing, really nice. So that is Pratt. I use Pratt 3.0. It's wonderful. Next up, my cast bar. This is Quartz. If I just unlock it here, you'll see I have a few different things. I have my target in the center of the screen. If I just target myself and cast a spell, whoops. You see, I have it in the direct center of my screen, so I know when someone's casting a spell. Here's the focus. My focus bar, my focus target frame appears just above this, so it shows it. So if I focus myself, I cast a spell. You'll see that. It's right there. Lovely jubbly. And then, of course, my bar is down here. Nice and simple. And I have this nestled up with everything else, so I can see it really easily. So if my eye were, for instance, here, I can see really easily what I'm casting at any given point. Because the idea is to have as much information as I can near the center of the screen. Well, not the center of the screen, all at one point, like this. So that's what I'm aiming here with my cast bars. Now, Quartz is a great add-on that has a lot of functionality. However, it has a lot of superfluous elements to it. And by that, I mean, let's have a look at this. So we have the player cast bar, which is the one down here, which is great. We have the target cast bar, again, useful. Focus, useful. Pet, useful. And then we have latency, which is, if I just cast again, you'll see it's this red section of the bar here that shows you my latency. And it shows you when you might realistically be able to cast another spell. Great for casters that are constantly casting. Trade skill merge, when you're casting a lot of spells, when you're creating a lot of different things for trade skills, it merges them into one bar, which is okay. Global cooldown shows a little blipping bar, which I don't use. Buff reminds you when you're missing certain things. Here's your lightning shield, stuff like that. I don't use that at all. The mirror, which is just entirely unhelpful. The timer, unhelpful. Swing, unhelpful. Interrupt can be helpful. Shows you when you're interrupted, which is nice. Range can be useful, but not massively. Flight, I don't need to know how long I'm going to be on a flight. And enemy cast bars, although this seems like it's something you want, it doesn't seem to really show too much, especially not with the way I use this, so I don't use that. So I kind of boil this down to its essential elements. So my cast bar, the target cast bar, the player cast bar, and the focused cast bar. That's just what I use, so I'll just clear my focus here. So that's Quartz. If I just go back into it and do a bit of editing, for instance, the player bar. If I just unlock and I show you the player bar here, you can change everything. You can change like its width, the height, and everything like that. I just changed it now. I'm going to have to... Yeah, okay, that's good. No. There we go. Okay, 307. Need to remember that. And you can change everything from, you know, how big it is, how small it is, how it works, the font it uses. It's very complicated, but really cool. So I would definitely suggest you take your time to edit that to make sure it all works. But that's Quartz. Great little add-on. Next up. /RSA or Raeli's Spell Announcer. Now this, it's a great way to announce your spells to your raid or anyone nearby. Now, as I said, I use Bloodlust. I'm pretty much the person in my raid that Bloodlusts, so we'll set up a little thing for that. Now, before we do this, I suggest that if you do download this add-on, make sure you go through everything and delete or disable most of them, because... For instance, when I purge a spell, people don't need to know that. When I hex, people don't need to know. When I grounding tome, fire elemental totem, capacitor totem, maybe, astral shift, ascendance, ancestral spirit, not all that necessary. You need to make sure you're not spamming anyone when you use this add-on, alright? So, very important that you do that. Very important indeed. But in general, there are a few useful things that you can use this add-on for. So, for instance, I used to use Ancestral Guidance with it until they nerfed it in Warlords of Draenor, but it would tell the raid that I would be using Ancestral Guidance. So, for instance, let's go for one with Bloodlust. So, here we have the different ways we can announce it. So, let's announce it in a yell, and we will type in... so, this is what you yell when it starts. So, I will yell, subscribe to me and give me money. Right? Okay, and then at the end of it, we'll say, why did you unsubscribe? And then a sad face, right? I will change this, I swear. So then you Bloodlust, subscribe to me and give me money. And then, let's just imagine 35 seconds pass. I'll just right-click on the buff to remove it prematurely. And there you go. Why did you unsubscribe? There you go. I'm terrible. But yeah, that's the whole idea. So we'll just go back to spell options here. And, I don't like putting it in raid because sometimes you'll end up yelling at the wrong time. I just like using it in raid because that generally means that people in a raid will know when you bloodlusted. So it's very helpful. So, rarg, bloodlust, and then bloodlust, down, unhappy face. There we go. So, oops. It's very, very important that you hit this OK button here. So, rarg, bloodlust. There we go. Perfect. So that's Raeli's spell announcer. I really only use it for Bloodlust and not really anything else. But it depends on your class and what kind of cooldowns you have. So that's very good. I mean, I know that Warlin, Priest, who is actually now going back to a Warlock because he's a terrible person. But on his... did I say Priest? I meant Paladin. On his Paladin, he, like when he uses Devotion Aura, he lets the raid know using Raeli's spell announcer. So really helpful. So that's Raeli's spell announcer. Great add-on. Just useful for a raid team more than anything else. Next up, one of the big ones, Shadowed Unit Frames, which is my unit frame. So I type in /SUF to activate this and just drag it to the side here. So Shadowed Unit Frames replaces the default unit frames and instead lets me use my own. Now, this is very complicated, this add-on, and I do have a guide about it and some other things. I'll include a link in the description for you to have a look at that. But we'll just go over how I have it set up here. So we'll just go to Enabled Units. These are the things that I have enabled. So for Shadowed Unit Frames to display, I have the player, the pet, the target, my focus, the target of my target, which is down here, my focus target, the boss, which shows up here in a raid, the arena frames, which I don't use, but they appear over here, and that's it. And then if you go to the High Blizzard ones, I basically have all of the same ones disabled, so that I don't also have that. So for instance, if I undid Hide Player Frame, I don't even know if it would pop up because I have other add-ons getting in the way, but it would probably appear around here and just be in the way because you'd have two versions of the player frame, which you don't want. You don't want that extra information. It's just in the way. So that's how I have that set up. But in terms of the actual customization, this is how I have it set up. All right. So I have the. Let's start with my player. So I have the portrait enabled. I like having the 3D portrait and the position on the left. I don't want it on the right because that just looks weird to me. I like it having it's looking at his name. I don't have it faded for combat. I like having it available all the time. You can have the border highlighting when you mouse over it, but I don't really find that too necessary. We have the combo points enabled. It's useful for other things like, for instance, the shield on Korag. Combat text, not necessary in the slightest. Not necessary at all. You can have the smooth bar so that when your health goes up and down, it will move in a steady rate as opposed to like hopping up and down. I really like that. The frame is set to 125%. This is the scale and the width. Just having it set up to it so it's nice and clean. And then I have it anchored. I don't have this one anchored. I have the target frame, if I just go to that. I have that anchored to the player frame, so that if I move one, it moves the other, so that they're completely central. That's really nice. What else? The actual bars, I have the health bar, all that stuff. This isn't really anything I use too much. The widget size is where you get the kind of the most effect here. Now, as you can see, you can change what takes up the majority of the action bar. The unit frame. So, for instance, I have my actual portrait taking up only 22%, and the health bar takes up a lot of it in terms of height. You can change the height, you can lower it like that to make it all work like that. And now I need to figure out what that was. Crap. Was it 2.6? The target frame will have that. If I just go to that. This is why I need to be careful with editing. It's 2.4. Okay, there we go. 2.4. Nice and simple. So that's how I have that all sorted out. And really, that's kind of mostly it. It's nice and simple. I color the health by class here. You can color it by the health %, or you can just have it be a static color if you want. I just like having it as the class. Auras are another big one. So if I go to general here and I unlock things, BAM! Suddenly everything looks terrible. That's okay, don't worry, don't panic. this just shows you what it could look like. So if I go to target here, and you'll see I have all of my debuffs here. Very important that I see the debuffs, and all the buffs up the top, nice and separated. So if I go to auras here, I have the buffs, the general, you can have them enabled or disabled, you can filter them, you can show the display, you can scale them as much as you want, you can position them to be in any particular position, so you can move them like this, but I don't want to do that, so this is just how I have them set up. Very nice. Same, you can do exactly the same thing with the debuffs. And that's just kind of it. I mean, you can drag and drop these frames as much as you want. I don't use the party or the raid frames, I use a different add-on for that, we'll get onto that in a bit, but that's shadowed unit frames. Very powerful and very complicated add-on. Moving on, my damage meters. This is Skada. By typing Skada config. Now this is pretty simple. I just have the damage shown. I used to also have the healing shown, but I use this space for a few other things. So I like having that space free. I want to keep this interface nice and clean. God, I'm just stumbling over all my words right now, but that's okay. But one great thing about Skada, I don't know if you can do this with Recount, which is a different version of Skada. It's just a different add-on. I can right-click on this and look at the different things on a per fight basis. So if I want damage taken, I can look at that. Dispels, healing, things like that. Here's the damage. Which is what I have it set to by default. So here I have the icon. The color of the bar is the color of the class. Then the position on the damage meters, the name, how much damage they've done, their DPS, and how much uptime they've had on their DPS. So nice and simple. That's Skada. It's just set up in a nice, simple way. I just have it over here, out of the way, and locked. So that's Skada. Next up, another one that I'm asked a lot about. If I just activate my friendly nameplates, this is TidyPlates. You'll see I have a very unique-looking TidyPlates here. So you see these look very interesting in terms of their look. So I'll just go over to the training dummies again to show you some hostile nameplates. These don't actually activate on critters, which is good because I don't need to see critter nameplates. So you'll see I have these set up here, and they're just really good. If I flame shock this guy, you'll see it also comes with the actual debuff timer up here, which can be helpful. And so, for instance, if I then also debuff this, as it just kills my Saber and Bodyguard, those things terrify me. You see, if I can actually see the remaining duration on the other training dummy, even though I don't have it targeted. So that's really helpful, especially when you're constantly... I just need to run away so I get out of combat. Especially if you're constantly spreading flame shocks as an enhancement shaman, or if you're casting it a lot as an elemental shaman. And of course, it works with other debuffs as well. So that is TidyPlates. So I just type in TidyPlates here. I use the classic theme, which is a different download entirely. I will include the link in the description underneath the TidyPlates add-on. It's just a different thing. You just install that as well as TidyPlates, and it works nicely. And in terms of the actual options, I always want to have the show level. I use the default Blizzard font, and that's kind of it. I make sure that I scale them up a little bit bigger than normal. I have them go to a spotlight scale if I'm targeting them, or if they cast a spell, so that I know I can help interrupt if I have to. You can set filters here to units that you don't want shown, which is helpful. You can filter the non-elites, neutral units, different NPCs, things like that, so it's really helpful. And then you can color things. It's just a nice add-on that just sorts everything out. And so that's TidyPlates. Lovely, lovely add-on. I definitely suggest it. And what's great about this is, unlike the default TidyPlates, if you find a particular mob that is elite, then it will actually... I will actually show you. I'm going to hearth to Ashran and find myself an elite, because the actual frame for elites displays differently than normal NPCs, because this is something that's always bothered me with TidyPlates, is that I've been going through things on TidyPlates, just looking at nameplates. That's how I identify things. So if I got this is how you identify it. So you've got all these normal people here. So this is a player, this is a pet, this is just a normal NPC, but these ones are elite, and you can see because they have this elite dragon around them, which is how you normally identify them. And as you see, it only has this little elite word down here that shows me on shadowed unit frames, because that's just the way I have it set up, because that golden dragon wouldn't work with this kind of setup. So I have them instead up here, which shows this golden dragon here that lets me know they're elite, which is just really, really helpful. I'm just going to hearth back to my garrison because I live in my garrison. But yeah, that's TidyPlates and the classic plates, and that's why I use the classic plates add-on, because it uses that functionality and it adds those golden dragons to show you elites, which is just really, really helpful. So that's TidyPlates. Next up is a pretty simple one, unlimited chat message. This isn't necessary it's just one that I love. So, for instance, this is... Let's say you're typing a message and you're like, we don't need you in the raid team anymore for these reasons, blah, 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 blah. Right. And then as you were typing, you would hit a wall, right? And you would just like, you would stop. You would not be able to type anymore until you pressed enter and started typing your next line of text, which is just like a macro. But sometimes you want to just type endlessly like this. And this add-on lets you do that, except when you post it, bam! Oh, I didn't actually type enough. Wow. Okay, let me just hit my keyboard a little bit more. We nearly got there. That must have been very close to 255 characters. There we go. So, we don't need you in the raid for anymore for these reasons. Here's the second post, and here's the third post. It's really, really great. It just shows you, it's just great. It just lets you keep typing without having to stop. I will say this doesn't work with Battle.net. So if I were to type to Elishan again and be like, Blargol 1,000 times, it would end up actually stopping. So you see, I'm trying to type here, but it doesn't work anymore. So it's an old add-on that doesn't work so much with Battle.net functionality, but really helpful for things like guild chat, save chat, party chat, raid chat, all that stuff. So just really good. Don't use it to spam. If you do, and you do it because of me, I swear I will kill you. If you download this and become a spammer, it's not my bloody fault. You're the one that does it, alright? So that's unlimited chat message. Helpful. Next up, probably the last really big one. Well, maybe not, but this is VuhDo. Now, this takes a bit of explaining. So this is my VuhDo down here. I have it set to different things. So let's start with the way it looks. So VuhDo is a very complicated add-on that I get a lot of questions about. I will show you the basic things because people want to know how to set up their VuhDo to look like mine. So I'm just going to basically go through the different tabs, and if you really want to set this up exactly as I have mine set up, then you can just copy all of the settings here. So we'll start with basic general. We have this here. Scanners, just like this. I don't really use this. Threat incoming, here it is right here. Don't really use this either. AoE advice, I don't use this at all. Miscellaneous, I don't use this at all either. Indicators, don't really use that either. Clusters, don't really use that. And bouquets, don't use that either. Okay. Spells, I do a few things here. As you see on the left here, I have this target command, so that when I left click on something in VuhDo, it targets them. You see, I'm targeting myself there. Nice and simple. Right button is Greater Healing Wave, which I can actually change. I don't use that. You could set this to be, for instance, menu. So you type that, hit OK, and you right click, and it will give you a menu. Although I don't like this menu personally, so I don't use that functionality. So I can actually just delete that. And then middle button is a Riptide. You can basically use this like you would Healbot, but I don't use that. I use mouse over macros instead for that, which you can find in my macros guide. But yeah, these are the spells with the mouse. You can change them to be shift. As you can see, that doesn't work because I typed it wrong, but I just don't use it. It's control, alt, another control, shift, control, shift. I don't use any of that stuff. Keys local, I don't use this. Keys global, I don't use this. Miscellaneous, I don't use this. Hostile, I don't use this. So that's all that stuff. Buffs, I don't use any of this because I use other add-ons to tell me when I'm missing these buffs. Again, general, don't use it. Colors, I don't use it. Rebuff, I don't use it. Debuffs, I'm pretty sure I use a couple of these. So this is how I have this set up here. Custom, I don't really have any custom things here, although they can be helpful, but this is just exactly how I have these set up. So I'm just going to scroll very slowly down here because I don't want to miss anything out and get questioned about it, although I'm sure I will miss something. It is just the nature of these, so there we go. So that's the custom. Visuals, this is how I have this set up. I don't really use this too much as well. Panels, this is where I use a lot of different things. So this is how I have the general panels set up. It is important to note though, if I go to tools quickly, I have different profiles, right? So the default one that I use for most rating is 20 man. So if I apply that, like that, or is it 20 man? It's 25 man. I have a lot of these different things set up. There we go, it's 25 man, there we go. And if I go to move, and I do the test with 25 players, you'll see there are the 25 players. We'll do it with 20 though, just to be nice and safe. So we'll go back to panels, and it will show these. So, okay, so here we go. This is how I have it set up mid-raid, right? So this is what the panels look like for a default 20-man raid. So you can now use these to have a look and set it up as you would like it to set up. So I use loose, 3 columns max, 13 columns rows. Hide empty, horizontal. I don't use me first, and I don't use bottom. Sort by tank, healer, damage dealer. Don't invert it. Anchor is on the top left. I haven't touched this panel at all here. Not necessary. Sizing. This is exactly how I have this set up. Pretty simple. You can just look at that and copy it as you want. Bars, I use the VuhDo convex texture, which you can set here or here. I use the mana bar height of 6. I don't use the side left or side right too much. I use a gradient for the bar color. I use a damage flash for pretty high damage, which is very helpful. Headers, I don't use them at all. Headers just annoy me more than anything else. I don't use them in the slightest. Targets, I don't show them at all. Tooltips, I show them, because you see I mouse over them and it shows them. But that I use the standard ones instead of the VuhDo ones, but that's it. It's just to make it comfortable more than anything else. Text, show it in the center. I use a shadow. I don't really do too much of this. I haven't really customized any of this, so you can use this as you want. Hot icons, I show them on the left here. Glossy with text, Riptide and Earth Shield, those are the two ones I use. That's just it. Next up, hot bars. Earth Shield and Riptide on the left again, just to show it. Miscellaneous, I enable raid icons there at the top. Scale of 1. I use overhealing, but not too much. Frame strata is set to medium. That's it. Moving on to colors, I use curse and magic to show them. I don't use disease, poison, or custom. That's kind of it. Going on to modes, I don't use this. Powers, I just leave those as default, although I don't show mana bars, so that's not necessary. Hots, I show them here. Hots 2, just like this. Classes, default, haven't touched that. Raid icons, just like normal, haven't touched that. Target, again, I don't use this, but I haven't touched it either. Onto tools, which I have shown you recently. I have, although this looks like a lot, I only really use 10, 25, and 40, and a solo. And that's it. And that just changes where this is and how it really, it's scale of the different panels, and where they are, and how they stack over one another, which is all affected by the panels bar. And that's kind of it. So that's this here. Key layouts, I don't use this. Export, don't use. Share, no. Panel, nope. Reset, no. And then move is just a default thing that lets you move. So that is VuhDo. I've gone through everything about VuhDo. Hopefully that works for you. I'm just going to go back into tools, profiles, and set it back to be solo. So it goes back down here. There we go. Lovely jubbly. So that is VuhDo. Hopefully I covered everything you want to know there. Next up, WeakAuras. This looks remarkably complicated, but it's not. I actually organized all this. WeakAuras lets you show, bam, a whole bunch of different stuff. Really complicated looking, but I will quickly take you through everything. These just show different things to help me with my rotation, just help me in general. Echo of the Elements is this one. This is the duration of my Flame Shock. This is Maelstrom Weapon getting to 5 stacks. This is the stacking of my Maelstrom Weapon. This is the cooldown of Fire Nova, because I don't really have a button to put it anywhere. The duration of Spirit Walker's Grace. The cooldown remaining on Unleash Elements, which is great for... on Unleash Flame, which is great for Elemental. The duration remaining of my Fire Totem. The cooldown remaining on my Earthquake. The stacks of my Fulmination for Elemental. The duration and cooldown of my Elemental Mastery, which only shows up when it's got about 15 seconds remaining on the cooldown. Same with Ascendance. The duration and the cooldown when it goes to 15 seconds. My Water Totem, which is a little bit off-center there, which is weird, but that's fine. Do I have that here? I'll find it later. The duration of Hex, and the stacks of Earth Shield on my focus target. Missing a Fire Totem. And that's it. Those are all my WeakAuras. Just nice and simple. WeakAuras is a really complicated add-on that I've made a video about, an entire video dedicated to WeakAuras, and I'll include a link in the description to that as well. And finally, XLoot. Now this is really for personal preference more than anything else. Now this, if I just show you the anchor, I only use so here's the anchor. Let me explain what it does first. So XLoot is a loot monitor, basically. It tells me when I loot things. So I don't like having the loot appear in my chat window because that just annoys me. I like having it in this loot window here, but I don't want to have to click between the tabs every single time I loot something. So I just want to know what I've looted briefly after I loot it. So I just, for instance, if I do this, you see it pops up here. Sorcerous Earth and Burnished Leather, and then they despawn. That's it. Nice and simple. So if I then go over, just use my speed increases here, and then go over to my War Mill shipment, do this. You can also mouse over it, see? You can mouse over it nice and easily. And that's MoveAnything there, appearing on the right-hand side as opposed to in the center of my screen. So really helpful, as I said earlier. So that's XLoot. Just as a note, if I go to my add-on control panel, which comes default with the game, and I scroll down to XLoot here, as you see, I only use XLoot, the master, the monitor, and the options. I don't use the group or the frame because those add functionality that I do not want. And in terms of XLoot, I just show the anchor, move it to where I want it to be, make it go down, scale 1.2, and that's it. And you can filter it. I do it by everything, and if anyone gets anything rare or better, it also shows me in my group or raid. So that's it. That is XLoot, and that concludes this video. That is my entire user interface. Hopefully, this video was helpful to you, and that you found it helpful, and that you can hopefully stop asking questions constantly about whether or not I'm going to release my UI. I'm not going to, because you should build your own user interface, one that you're comfortable with for your class, your spec, and your playstyle, because it is completely unique. Alright, you play differently to almost everyone else. So, very important that you have a user interface of your own that you're comfortable with. So, now that rant is out of the way, I will conclude this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and found it helpful. As always, I offer my heartfelt thanks to my patrons for supporting the channel, and, you know, just thank you guys. Thank you. It means a hell of a lot to me. See, I get so much more emotional when I'm not editing myself, but yes. If you have any questions, thoughts, comments, or more thoughts, which I'm sure you will, because I'm sure I've missed something. If I have missed something, just ask. I will let you know, and I will do my best to clear everything up. If you want to do that, you can contact me using the links in the description, or you can just leave a comment. That's the end of this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I wish you the best of luck with your user interface.